like 50, 90 finished very long ago. I'm sure like me your level of anticipation grows. I need to write more songs to improve my portfolio. I never know when I might meet an impresario. Let's have a solo. Of all the questions in my life, this one does vex me so. I need the answers so that I can get on with the show. And so I hope you'll tell me, 'cause I really need to know. The calendar remains unchecked. Is it FAWM yet?
Good evening. It is not FAWM yet. FAWM starts in 106 days. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Ryako Music. Good evening, Array of Emotions, who has been giving one of their cats her insulin injection. But the stream was on. Fun times. Excellent. Yes, it's not FAWM yet. We are still in deepest October. It's, what day is it today? It's the 18th. This will be the last Is It FAWM Yet show for about a week. So there won't be a Is It FAWM Yet show next Sunday. There will not be an HFO TV show next Thursday, because when I finish tonight, I will be pulling this room to bits. So good evening, Belinda. Yes, it's all systems go. Check this out. This is my desk. So it has been built. It's being oiled at the moment, because rather than being painted, it gets oil finished. And when that's dry, Guy is going to fit the keyboard shelf and a few other bits and pieces, and then it will be shipped to me. Ryako Music says, and so it begins. Indeed. I'm really, really, really excited by it all. And so, yes, the desk is on its way. I've been beginning to thin things out in here, so I've been moving stuff around. And as you can see, I got rid of the mattress. The mattress is now downstairs, and I don't know if you can hear that through the SM7B, but oh boy, has it changed the acoustic properties of this room. It's one heck of a lot liver, more liverer than it was with a dirty great piece of fabric stuck over the top of my head. So that's going to be quite interesting, getting used to recording vocals. I may actually have to buy acoustic treatment for the room. But as you can see, lots of stuff moved around. But when I shut down tonight, I've got to start moving all this kit, because all of this has got to go. The bed's got to be dismantled. I'm going to put it on free cycle this week, and hopefully it will get rid of it. Array of Emotion says, what wood is that? Reclaimed wood? It's probably oak or something of that sort, and built like a tank. And it will be covered in interesting little blemishes and scars. And some of his desks even have stamped IDs of companies who used the wood for whatever they were last used for. So it is going to have a shed load of character. It's not going to be your average MDF particle board mass production job that gets shipped from the other side of the world. This one's coming from the other side of Bristol. So I'm rather pleased about that. But as I say, there'll be no show next Sunday, so there won't be an Is It FAWM show next Sunday. There won't be a Headfirst Only TV stream on Thursday night, because I'm going to take a break. even if I do get everything, well, I'm not going to get everything ready by Thursday. I mean, let's face it, I'm 60. I do not do things rapidly, especially when it involves serious moving of stuff round. So a ray of emotion says nice. Oh no, an oak desk like that is going to weigh a ton. The good news is it comes in bits. So the work surface and the bridge for the monitors is one bit. The PC 19-inch rack mount leg on that side is a second piece, and then the third piece is the other support on the other side, which means it should be manageable. And looking at the wood, it's not railway sleeper thickness, which some of Guy's earlier ones were. So I was a bit relieved, because it means that it's not going to weigh quite as much as I thought it was going to weigh, which is good. So that's arriving this week, and it's going to be all hands to the pumps when that arrives. So that is going to be my week, but I'm really looking forwards to just having a bit of headroom in here and breathing space, and, you know, less claustrophobia, really. Ryako Music says, I like the idea of desk tattoos. Yeah, you could sort of brand it, couldn't I? I could make the HFO logo out of something and burn it in. A mate of mine back in the day used to burn designs on bits of wood with an old soldering iron, and he did one for Lemmy many years ago. But yeah, so that's the plan. It will be all hands to the pumps when I shut down tonight. So as I say, I'm probably not going to be doing another mammoth 3-hour show, probably not 2-hour show, but I do have stuff to show you. So it's not just going to be me waffling and getting sidetracked about various things, but tonight's sidetracks, tonight's squirrels, tonight's diversions. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start off, as we mean to go ahead, with diversion number 1. A condition that I learned about today. Berserk llama syndrome is a thing. So I don't know if you follow the quite interesting elves on Twitter, which is qi-something.com. They tweeted today about berserk llama syndrome, or berserk male syndrome, as it is also known as. Sadly, llamas, and they're usually male llamas who suffer from it, usually have to be put down because they grow up thinking that humans are llamas too. So it's usually inherent in llamas who have been brought up in very, very intense and very, very regular human company. And they think humans are llamas. So they do all the territorial displays, chest barging, head-butting, spitting, biting, leg wrestling, you name it. They tend to do that to their human companions, and quite often from behind. So you can suddenly get mugged by a llama from behind, taken from behind by a llama. Not a good thing. So berserk llama syndrome is a thing that I learnt today. How about that? The other thing I learnt today is even better than berserk llama syndrome, because it doesn't involve cruelty to animals, but it involves animals never the same. It involves giant cats. The Nazca lines have been restored and have been examined, and previously hidden Nazca lines, beloved of Graham Hancock, Eric von Daniken, and most of the ancient astronauts crowd. The Nazca lines apparently also feature a giant cat, which I thought was wonderful. It says it dates from between 200 BC and 100 BC and emerged during work to improve access to one of the hills that provides a natural vantage point from which many of the designs can be seen. I think that's fabulous. But I didn't know domestic cats were a thing in South America. They aren't, are they? So how come they've got domestic cats? Or is it not a domestic cat and we're being given Duff Gen? It's actually a felid of some other description. But yeah, giant cat on the hill. Array of Emotion says, I hope they removed that Greenpeace logo while they were at it. Ryako Music says, I knew cats were gods. Yep, the Terry Pratchett quote, always worth trotting out. Thousands of years, cats were worshipped as gods. Cats have never forgotten this. Cats are a thing everywhere. That's what the internet taught me, says Ryako Music. Indeed. And it's funny, but when I feature pictures of cats on this stream, I get more viewers. So, cats. Knock yourself out, kids. Noisha says, I don't know. They have jaguars and other big cats. They do. And I think it's probably supposed to, maybe it's a jaguar, but I mean, look at it. That is a moggy. I mean, it's a moggy rolling on its back, inviting you to tickle its tummy, at which point it will sink its teeth into you, because that's what cats do. And that's a domestic cat pose, if ever there was one. Array of Emotion says they probably had smaller felines as well. Well, I think further research is needed on this point. Yeah, that was certainly an HFO television diversion worthy of squirrel status. I was chuffed to bits when I read that a couple of days ago, so I thought that was rather nice. What else has been happening on Tinternet? Well, Rocktober continues. I really need to do more listening, and it won't be on the monitors, but I think I'll probably be doing that downstairs this week because I've got catching up to do on Rocktober. People have been very, very busy, as you can see. So, I mean, in the last 3 hours, we've had 7 new songs uploaded. And Sapient continues his journey through the Metallica songbook. But we also have a Dolly Parton cover, a Twisted Sister cover, Sugar Babes cover, and I like Cover Overload. That was a good single. And Neil Diamond. Raja says, I mostly hear about hidden cities, not so much about cats as pets. Indeed. I was reading about a new book that's come out about the Younger Dryas extinction, which is this controversy over whether the Clovis people of the Northern Americas were wiped out by a near-miss cometary impact or not. And people are still arguing about whether it's even a thing or not. So puts into perception or perspective even the internet hoo-ha at the moment about the asteroid that's allegedly has a 1 in 240 chance of hitting us come November the 3rd, but it's 6 feet across. It's the size of a fridge. It'll burn up. We get rocks that size hitting us all the time and nobody turns a blind eye or nobody notices really. So yeah, the November election asteroid is about 6 feet across. Compare that with the Chelyabinsk meteor, which nearly caused a very, very nasty major incident, and as it was, injured quite a few hundred people. That was 56 feet across. So, yeah, order of magnitude difference. What else was I saying? Oh, yes, and the other astro news this week is that somebody's done some research on Betelgeuse, you know, the star in Orion that got very, very dim at the beginning of the year, and people were going, oh my God, it's going to explode. No, it's not. In fact, the latest research I was reading on Tinternet this week was quite interesting because they'd explained what caused the dimming, and apparently Betelgeuse belched out an enormous cloud of dust, and it was the dust getting in between us and the star that was causing the dimming. It wasn't actually anything to do with Betelgeuse. They've also realised by measuring Betelgeuse slightly more accurately that it's 25% closer to us than we previously thought it was. So it's about 540 light years away. And if you're thinking, does that mean it poses a danger when it goes supernova? Well, it ain't going to go supernova probably for at least 100,000 years, because it's not got into the right nuclear fusion stage of wanting to fuse iron, which doesn't work for stars. When a star tries to fuse iron, because it's run out of all the lighter elements, it tends to go bang. But Betelgeuse is not at that state, and is not at that state for 100,000 years-ish. So Ryako Music says, I remember this. Cool. Indeed. Array of Emotion says, there was that Japanese guy who got to visit Machu Picchu as the only visitor after being stuck in the country since the Rona outbreak. I saw that. I mean, good Lord, how privileged must you feel that somebody opens a global heritage site just for you? But I always feel a bit sad when I read about Machu Picchu these days, because the BBC Radio 1 disc jockey John Peel was, he died as a result of having a heart attack when visiting Machu Picchu, because I think the high altitude and the lack of atmosphere, or the lack of oxygen, got to him, and poor chap died as a result of visiting Machu Picchu. But nevertheless, we shall continue. So, yeah, loads more stuff to listen to on Rocktober, and I'm scrolling down, so it looks like oh no, we're now on 2 pages. 2 pages of music, guys. That's pretty darn impressive for Rocktober, in case you're not aware of the fact, is the wind down period after 50-90, which is you write 50 songs in the 90 days between July the 4th and October the 1st. Come October the 2nd, everybody goes, what do we do now? And the answer is, you write cover versions, or you record cover versions. So I've got 2 on the go at the moment. But as I said on last week's show, bit of a bugger, you can't really play cover versions unless you perform them live on Twitch. So have I got music for you? Well, actually, yes, because if you remember, Ryako Music says, did you get some rest? Me? Get rest? Yeah, right. No, actually, I kind of did. And to be honest, when I was saying, burnout, muse, blah, blah, no inspiration, can't concentrate. Remember last Thursday's show, I'd got the piece of music and I was just sort of, yeah, not feeling it. Well, that lasted until Saturday, because maybe had something to do with the bottle of wine I drank on Friday night, but I got a very, very long, very, very deep night's sleep. And on Saturday morning, I went back to that thing that I was having absolutely no luck with. And, I finished it off. Ryako Music says, damn it, you can't lecture me while ignoring your own advice. I have actually been chilling out, believe it or not. This was about 2 hours work. So I'll play the bass line just to refresh your memory from what it was that I got last time. So you remember that was my my whirly stereo, rather lovely. What was it? Pigments, which is the Arturia's multiple synth wavetable / all sorts of different types of synths. But yeah, after saying, "Oh, I'm just going to give up with this for a few days," chilled out on Friday, watched Fish on Friday on Facebook, and then chilled out and watched the latest and first episode of season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, which was, ooh, this is going in an interesting direction. And rather enjoyed it, but it sort of finished about 15 minutes before I was expecting it to, and left me sitting on the sofa going, oh, because now I've got to wait for another week till episode 2. But no, Mel, I did take your advice, and I had an early night on Friday. I slept in on Saturday morning. Yes, as Ryako Music says, I saw Mel on a podcast on Saturday night. Oh no, that was Friday night. Yes, and yeah, generally chilled out and have been going to bed early. And Ryako Music now says, OMG, Star Trek, what did you think? I like it. I like the fact that there's a random dude prepared to just sit in an office somewhere in the back of beyond on the random chance that somebody from Starfleet is going to show up and let him unfurl his flag. It was seriously weird in the best sort of completely WTF Star Trek moments. And Ryako Music says, I love it. Same here. But suitably inspired by Commander Michael Burnham's quest to reinvigorate a defunct Federation of Planets, this is what I ended up with on that track, what I just mentioned. So here we go. This is now going to be track number 6 on my album, The Geometry of Sleep. And this one's called Spindles. So that was Spindles from my forthcoming album, when I finally get round to finishing it off, which is going to be called The Geometry of Sleep. Ryako Music says, like that bit of guitar. Yeah, not a lot of guitar in this, and yeah, from being a bit fed up of just not being inspired to producing that in, like I say, about 2.5, 3 hours. I feel a lot better about my musical pursuits at the moment. Only problem is that listening to that and then listening to the 6 tracks that I'd already produced for that album, it was like, oh dear. Oh, well, yeah. That track kind of stands out a bit like a sore thumb because, as I said on Twitter earlier today, my skill set and my instrument set and the way I produce things has radically changed since I recorded the original versions of the Geometry of Sleep tracks, and those were in July. So taking 50/90 on this year as a challenge, and once again meeting that challenge, I ended up doing 65 songs this year. I've leveled up, as Mel said on Twitter, and it's painfully obvious when I went back and listened to the other tracks on the folder that I'd produced. So I thought, I'm going to have to go back and do those again, aren't I? But before I do that, I was really fired up yesterday because not only did I finish off that track that I couldn't get going at all on Thursday, I've done another track which I finished off this afternoon completely from scratch. And this one is loading as we speak, so I'm just going to busk until Ableton gets its act together and actually loads it. This one, because the album's called The Geometry of Sleep, so it's all about sleep and dreaming and phases of dreaming, and spindles are a type of electrical brain activity that we get when we're in sleep. And not entirely sure what they're for, but it does appear to be something to do with the restorative nature of how toxins and the byproducts of being a conscious being get flushed out of the brain during sleep. So that's what Spindles was. And this track, I thought, well, okay, I've done a track which is about anxiety dreams. How about the night terror phenomenon? Dazed and Confused. Good evening. Just saying hi. My internet is a complete mess. I'll have to catch this later after you upload it. No streaming for me today. Oh, sorry to hear that, mate. Have a good one. But hello, and yes, we'll see you on YouTube. Yeah, night terrors. So, as apes, we evolved so that when we sleep and we dream of walking or climbing or moving, our brain disconnects from our muscles. So that when we dream of going for a walk, when we were apes living in trees, we didn't get up out of the tree and go for a walk and plummet to our deaths. Strangely enough, the apes who did not have that evolutionary adaptation are the ones that died without passing on their genes. So we evolved the ability, whether we want it to or not, that when we go to sleep, we effectively paralyze ourselves. Thing is that mechanism doesn't always engage and disengage with 100% reliability. And so it is possible to be awake, but the disengagement of your motor system and being able to move has still engaged, which means that you are effectively paralyzed. Not only that, there are other little hypnagogic, meaning coming into or out of, hypnopompic, coming out of sleep, things that happen to our vision, and we can look at stuff and not recognize what it is. So picture this: you've got sleep paralysis, you wake up, you can't move, and you look at the dressing gown hanging on the back of your bedroom door, and it looks like a figure looking back at you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the core of the alien abduction experience. No flying saucers or extraterrestrials required whatsoever. The night terror experience, sleep paralysis experience, and I've suffered from it off and on. You know, I've had 4 or 5 episodes where I've woken up unable to move, unable to speak, and sensing a presence in the room. And then finally the block on movement gives way and you can breathe and speak and go, "Ugh!" And that completely shifts the illusion and it's gone. Ryaka Music says, alien abductions. Yeah, exactly. And night terrors have only been equated with alien abductions since various charlatans got on board and thought, oh, I can make money out of this back in the 1990s. Yes, I'm looking at you, Professor John Mack. It's nothing to do with aliens. It is a physical process. Wobby Wobbit, good evening. Array of Emotions, you're talking about the night hag. I am indeed. And this track, which is the new track that I've written for the Geometry of Sleep, I have called The Hag. And this is what this one sounds like. So that is called The Hag, and it is about night terrors, which is why the lead Mini Moog is a bit harsh. Ryako Music said that high frequency is quite sharp. I think I've diffused it somewhat with the reverb settings and the EQ settings prior to going into the reverb, but it might need taming down a bit more, I think. De Fresh Doge, good evening, says the song could fit into the Ghost Runner easily. Oh, yeah, okay. See, video game placement. I like the sound of that. So, a couple of things that I kind of learnt. Yes, I am still learning things on this. One is this little chappy down here, the MIDI arpeggiator that comes with Ableton. I always faff about with it a tremendous amount because there are loads of things that you can do with it that the tooltips tell you about, but that's kind of it. So that little button there says hold, and that completely changes the behavior of the arpeggiator, and I rather liked what it does. So basically, Ryako Music says I use it a lot. And the ubiquitous one is basically the one that is pretty much ubiquitous in the stuff that I do. But I like doing the offset, although on this I ended up moving the offset back to 0. But lots of fun there. Oh, De French Doe says the sound crafting was beautiful, head first only. Thank you very much, sir. That's very kind. The main synth on this is Arturia's emulation of the Casio CZ101. Glorious piece of kit. Very, very cheap, but now very, very sought after synthesizer. One of my mates has one and I'm very jealous. And brilliant at bass lines. Then we've got Arturia's Analog Lab, which I think it may still be on offer. It was on offer earlier this month, which is it's basically all the synths in the V collection, but you can only access presets rather than the individual emulations themselves. Although because I've got the V collection, I've got the emulations themselves. But so that's a Prophet 5 and Pigments, which is the wavetable synthesizer that's not in the V collection, which I bought separately because after playing with it in the V collection, it was like, ooh, this is good. Then another one that's not in the V collection is the Oberheim OBXA, or as Arturia call it, the legendary growl machine. And that's rather excellent. Raja says, I was watching a skeptic show last night and they had experts to prove or disprove as their opinions, where one lady laughed at alien abductions, not because she didn't believe, because she thought we were full of ourselves thinking we were worth studying. I was reading, Squirrel, I was reading a paper that was published in 2018 that's on the Archive, ARXIV server, written by, amongst others, Eric Drexler. And if you're a fan of Ed Regis's books on the bleeding edge of science, or you know anything about nanotechnology, Eric Drexler is a name you'll have heard before. And he co-authored the paper which took apart the Drake equation, which is the equation that Frank Drake came up with, a sort of back-of-the-envelope idea of figuring out how many civilizations there ought to be in our galaxy / the observable universe. And it was Frank Drake's attempt to answer the Fermi paradox, which was a question that was posed by the nuclear physicist who worked on the Manhattan Project, Enrico Fermi, back in the 50s, where he basically said, well, where are they then? Where are the aliens? And the idea was that the Drake equation, as Frank Drake and people like Carl Sagan put it together, gave us figures on the average of 75 to 100 civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. But Eric Drexler went back and said, well, those are point estimates, and point estimates are dodgy as hell, so let's do this properly. And he crunched the figures for what he thought were relatively understandable and acceptable values for what was plugged into the Drake equation, and turns out that there's very, very likely odds that it's just us. We are all there is, kids. So look after each other, because there ain't a lot else going on in the universe. So it's an interesting paper. I'll put the link in the YouTube notes to this. It's worth reading. Naja says, sorry, I'm very distraction. No, this is part of the fun, and the show would not be the show without you guys, and certainly you, Belinda, dropping really interesting little nuggets in, which, I mean, come on, it's my choice to pick them up and run with them, and that's damn well what I'm going to do. So keep at it. Naja says, they mentioned him a lot on my space discovery show. Well, yeah, Fermi, Drake, Sagan, all those lot. Shlukovsky's another one who wrote a book with. See, I'm totally squirreled now. It's bad enough that Fish on Friday's Facebook webcast was talking about a song that he'd written called The Great Unraveling. And of course, me being me, it was like, oh, that's a book. I need a copy of that book. So I went on the internet and I've ordered a copy second-hand for the princely sum of £5. It's a book about the Bush administration and what went wrong. And I managed to find a second-hand, signed by the author copy of the book for like £5. So yeah, that's my kind of nerding out. Some people go drunk shopping. I watch programs and order books. Win-win. Raja says, I love the Science Channel. Yeah. Unfortunately, I do not buy retail television other than Netflix, which is kind of a family deal. So I get a really good rate. Thanks, Ruth. But over here we have, they're not really science programs. They're called, or science channels. We have a channel called Quest. And, right, rant time. The reason we are in the mess that we're in at the moment, in terms of the governments that we have running us, is profoundly due to the level of credulity that people are expected to experience watching television. So look at this channel. This channel's called Quest. So you get to, in fact, let's go back to the grid because it's easy to understand that way. You get to midnight and it's Contact Project, Anatomy of a Cover-Up, how the CIA hid UFO sightings. Then you get American Chopper, UFOs, the lost evidence, Nazi UFO secrets, scroll. It's just, and where's Quest Red? There's another one that's just, drivel, absolute drivel. Say yes to the dress. Yes, well, maybe not. Sorry, I'm getting distracted and it's not really part of the show. I get it free, says Noirash. Don't tell anyone. So yeah, that was the Hag, and so I too. Yeah, the French Doe says, "Is that a clickbait channel?" That is History Channel rubbish. Exactly. I remember when the History Channel was actually about history. Now it's about flying saucers and Bigfoot. So yeah, don't bother. So I 2 tracks from saying, oh, I'm not inspired. I've ended with 2 tracks for the new album in the space of 2 days. And as I said earlier on, I went back and listened to the tracks that I'd done for the album before then and thought, oh dear, that's actually not as good. I'm going to show myself up. So I've started going back just for something to pass the time this afternoon, and went back to the track, and you might remember this one because this was a track that I don't know if you remember, back in July I was complaining that I couldn't get the right piano sound for it, and there were drums on it back then, and I listened to it on my little MP3 player as I was drifting off to sleep last night, because this track's called Drifting Off, get it, and was making mental notes on the tracks that I'd done in the beginning of the year when I first started putting this album together. Well, beginning of the year, sort of May, June, July. So the chat is now about toast, and this is not fair because I want toast. I baked bread yesterday, and I've discovered I don't like soda bread, which is, I discovered I was today years old to discover that soda bread is not named after some town in Ireland called Soda where they first made it. It's bread that's made with baking soda instead of yeast. And I made beer bread last night, and it was okay, but I messed up. I think I put too much. Well, I put honey in it, and that shouldn't have done that. Raja says it is good bread. Yeah, I think I will have to bolster myself for all the physical exertions I'll be doing in here. I will have to bolster myself with baking proper bread this week. That's going to be my clearing my head, decompressing, unwinding stuff. The French Doe says, now I'm hungry. Well, toast, that's, yeah, this is a ray of emotion says, so when are you starting on sourdough? Yeah, I had, when I first went to San Francisco, because sourdough was a thing in San Francisco back in the 80s. And one of the souvenirs I bought when I was staying with my dear friend Roz back in 1984 was a book on local sourdough recipes. So I might have to do that. But anyway, Ableton has now finally finished loading in the track that I was stalling to talking about. And this track is called Drifting Off. So this track, well, I'll play you what it sounds like now. And you remember I was saying I was complaining about the piano? Got rid of the piano because elbow's much better. I play guitar. So in fact, I was playing not one guitar, not 2 guitars, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guitars. And this is what it sounds like now. that's version 3 of Drifting Off, which is track number 2 on the Geometry of Sleep. And it sounds completely different to how it did. And I pulled the mix completely to pieces and grouped everything completely differently, mixed it completely differently. So all the orchestral stuff, and there's the Labs harmonic violin, which, as you can see, has got quite a lot of stuff thrown at it. I'm a great fan of Filter Delay, which is one of Ableton's stock plugins, which has 3 channels, left and right, and you can sync it 3, 5 and 6 in terms of beats to the bar and how it reacts to the beat, and I use that an awful lot. Grouped all the synths. The main sort of melody line on that is actually, and we're back to Arturia again, is the V collection, and they have a lovely Mellotron emulation. This is what it sounds like. Music says it definitely feels like drifting. It does. That's, well, strangely enough, Drifting Off. I love the Mellotron, and it's the high strings Mellotron, stereo strings. I love the fact it's got a whirly flywheel, and it's I'm huge Mellotron nerd, as you no doubt are already aware of that fact. But that particular Mellotron is also drenched in this little chap, which is Native Instruments Realm spacey bonkers reverb system, bonkers reverb plugin, and that preset is called Dark Sister. So there's an awful lot of reverb on an awful lot of the tracks in this. Noaja is reporting. Noaja sent me a photograph earlier today, and it was like, oh my God, because her back garden is currently under a foot of snow, and now Noaja says, God damn it, started snowing again. It stopped for a sec, now it is back. It is too early in the year for it to be that bad. I never get snow that much, ever, here. I think the most it snowed here in the last 5 years was once a couple of years ago. We got about 3-4 inches of snow that blew into some drifts that were maybe 6 inches deep. And I was in shock when I saw Belinda's picture, because it was like, oh! But, and it's October, for goodness sake. You should not be getting snow that bad that early. So, and going back to Fish on Friday, because he was talking about his trees in his garden, because he was on Gardener's World a couple of weeks ago. He was talking about the berries on the trees in his garden. He was saying just how many berries there were and how that meant it was going to be a really hard winter. And the Daily Express, which does this every year, has already started running its Snowmageddon headlines, as if they're bloke who looks at pine cones and the seaweed hanging outside his window and goes, oh yes, it's going to be a hard winter. And we're back to the credulity of the British public as orientated such by the mass media, whether it be the Daily Express's preposterous news weather forecast, or Quest Red's aliens, and Bigfoot, and whatever else we can garner that will get us. Snowmageddon, blah, ha 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 ha, says Ryako Music. We get this every year. The Daily Express runs stories every year in all caps, I kid you not, on their website about how bad the snow is going to be. it's preposterous, and it's 2 or 3 guys who have their own weather forecasting website. Yeah, right. Anyway, back to the subject in hand. That was drifting off. What I am more happy with now, because it had drums on it and the drums just didn't work. And with the remixes, and I've also swapped out, you notice here, the main master send. I'm now using Exponential Audio's glorious reverb. I've finally figured out how to get good results from it, because I'm basically spent the first 6 months of having it being completely intimidated, apart from anything else, just by the preset list. That's the preset list. There's 3 pages of it. But I figured out how to use it, and it is a glorious reverb. And if you can pick it up from Exponential Audio or Isotope, who now own Exponential Audio, it is well worth your money, because it's a splendid reverb. And a mate of mine who performs touch guitar, called Marcus Reuter, explained, I was saying, how do you get your guitar sound? And he told me what his effects chain was, and there was very little in it, but what there was in it was an instance of R4. So if Marcus uses it and gets the stuff that he gets out of it, then I've barely scratched the surface with it. So that will be one of my homework sessions when I've finished putting the studio together. Noajai says, don't you guys have a farmer's almanac? We do indeed. No, Noajai said, that's how we know what kind of shit weather we'll have. My grandfather lived by it. Since he died, I've had to read it myself. There is a British one, and I can't remember what it's called, but my parents were the same. They used to buy it every year religiously, and it would always tell them what the weather was going to be, and it was never what it said it was going to be. So hey ho. Anyway, I was on a roll with this, going back to tracks, and rather than rebuilding them from the ground up, of saying, well, maybe I'll just sort of tweak what I just did. So I went back to the first track on Geometry of Sleep, and this was the track that kind of sparked the album, because I recorded this, and it's called Retiring, as in going to bed. And I thought it was a nice play on words, because at the time when I wrote the original version of this was when I discovered that I could actually afford to retire. So there was a nice play on words with, or a double meaning with the words. Once again, because I've been a busy lad this week. I think it's probably because I'm trying to get as much music making in this weekend as I can, because I know it's going to be at least a week before I've got everything back up and running, when I've pulled everything in here apart. It's not going to be a trivial task, as I said earlier. But right, we are loaded. So once again, there were drums on this, aren't anymore. I used to have a real thing about people posting stuff on Form and saying, oh yeah, this is an ambient track, and it'd have drums on it. Because I mean, I grew up with discrete music and music for films, and I think I've got somewhat. Let's see how many. Right, bear with me a second. Squirrel. Well, it's not really a squirrel. This is relevant. So I've got my MP3 versions of albums on here. So this is my Brian Eno directory. So this is just my collection of Brian Eno albums. There are 44 in here. So I'm kind of a bit of a aficionado of Brian Eno. And yes, I've listened to these multiple times. Some of them, the Music for Films trilogy, are brilliant. Thursday Afternoon there is one track that lasts 60 minutes and 50 seconds. And there is a wonderful, wonderful essay in, I think is it the New York Times? Might be the New York Times, about a couple who are in a bar in New York and somebody puts Thursday Afternoon on the jukebox. And it's one of the funniest pieces of writing about music I've ever read. Yeah, it's a wonderful track. So a lot of Brian Eno, and Brian wouldn't put drums on ambient tracks if because the whole point of discrete music was that you turned it down so that you couldn't really listen. Brian Eno got hit by a taxi many years ago, so he was quite seriously injured, and he was basically in traction, flat on his back in hospital. And people used to set music playing for him to give him something to listen to, and nurture him, feed his head. And he said in an interview many years ago that on one of these occasions that somebody had left a piece of music playing, but they hadn't turned the volume up loud enough for him to actually hear it properly. And he was saying the experience of trying to listen to this piece of music that was really, really quiet meant that his experience of that piece of music became something completely different. And that is how the beginning of ambient happened, because what he then did was that for the album Discrete Music, and if I go back, because I've closed it, which of course I shouldn't have done, for the album Discrete Music, he actually just played that classical piece. And it's, strangely enough, remember I was talking about Rob Paravonian, Pachelbel is Following Me? The piece of music that he picked for Discrete Music is Cannonbell's Pachelbel, Canon in D major by Johann Pachelbel. And they are, the whole point of Discrete Music was you were supposed to play it very, very quietly. So no drums. So I've gone back to this and said, look, if I'm going to do this as an ambient piece of music, then I am not going to do drums. Right, I am aware the French dog has asked a question. Totally off topic. Well, come on, man, that's what this stream is about. You know this. Do you know any brass VST that fits into a swing jazz context? I started working on something, but BBC Orchestra's brass doesn't work in that context. That's an interesting one. And to be honest, the stuff that I use in that context isn't a VST, I'm afraid. It's that. French Dough says, why does it have to be hardware? Garitan have a big band package, Wobby says. Swing jazz, but I wondered. I have. Let me just drop it on a. Let's just drop a track on here. What I do have, and this will set you back considerably less than the Garitan package because it's €29, and that is Epic Brass and Woodwinds. Saying that, I may have a free one as well. I'll check that one in a second. I love these things. So Spitfire Audio, Epic Brass and Woodwinds. You basically have everybody, rather than with the BBC Symphony Orchestra, how it splits it out into all the different ones. With the €29 package, you basically just get brass or woodwinds. Although they do split it up. So you've got live, long and short. So if I play a bit of the brass. It's a bit plodding for jazz, isn't it? Let's try the short one and let's pull the expression up a bit as well. Let's see what that sounds like. That is horrendously overdramatic. So I'd say probably you're gonna draw a blank on that one in terms of jazz swing. A bit too epic for jazz, says De French Dose. I think you're absolutely right. However, fear not, because if we go to those lovely people from Plogue and drop Sforzando into a track, now I just have to go and raid my many different sample libraries. Let's try one of these, shall we? What have we got? Got rather a lot. There it is. So the one I should have actually looked at was this one. So now so it's a bit sluggish. Different state goes brap. Yes, we're back to Hans Zimmer, aren't we? So if you install Sforzando, if you haven't already installed Sforzando, there are lots and lots of brass sections for you to play with. And the one that I really, really like is the War Tuber one, which is the Cariofa. And is that going to do anything? There we go. So the Cariofa samples. I love the War Tubers. So you can control the velocity on it. I'm hammering the push with this at the moment. So very, very fun samples. So yeah, have a browse through. Have a browse through the stuff that you can get from Plogue and the sites that Plogue link to, and there are dozens of them. And I really must try the bones and the Mariork stuff. I've got to teach myself how to use this, because the stuff that I love it. I've got some very, very weird stuff here. And we're back to Jescola Buzz. So, but I'm sure I got more brass than that somewhere. French horn, did I see that? There we go. So let's try that. That's doable. Defresto says, I'll install it tomorrow. Another convert joins the cult. Sports Handout is brilliant. There are some seriously good free sounds that you can get with it. There's a mellotron. They do. Look, there's some Garitan stuff here, but it's kind of nothing brassy. What have we got there? Brassy hits. Free sounds brought to you by Plogue, Garitan, Analog Industries, Digital Sound Factory, and Patch Arena. Yes, I'm not going to turn into Trevor Horn with that, I don't think. Okay, so what was I on before we went down a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole? It's Inception, but with diversions. So let's delete that. I was talking about this track. Oh, sorry, Wobby. Please apologise to Cheesy. I made Cheesy jump. Yeah, this let's something nice and calming then. So this is the first track on the album, which when it started had drums and a ticking clock all the way through it. And I looked at or listened to that last night or the night before when I'd done my new tracks and thought, hey, these are really good. And then listened to the version that this was and thought, oh dear. So again, pulled the mix apart, really, really changed the relative balance of things. The engine of the track was this bunch of tracks, which is just an Analog Lab bass line, which I think was a Pigments synthesizer. Is that going to open? There we go. It was a Pigments synthesizer. So it's a nice arpeggiator. But what I did was that I then dropped the basic audio from that track into 5 separate channels, which each receive the raw audio from track number 3. So the first one, I'm using beat repeat and then an auto filter and then a fuzz. And on the next one, I'm using beat repeat and then a flanger. And then on the next one, I'm using beat repeat and then, yeah, whatever that is. It's that's another filter, isn't it? And then on the next one, oh, look, it's moving 356's filter delay dropped on. Yes, you guessed it, beat repeat. I rather like beat repeat. You may have noticed this. And then the final one is an LFO that's driving the filter cutoff on something and basically just mangling the individual sound that comes out of channel number 3. And each of those tracks gets automated, so it only comes in at a certain point in the mix. So if I go to, say, this one and expand it, So this one only comes in after 33 bars, and they gradually get introduced so that the mangling of what's happening in channel 3 gets progressively weirder and madder and less controllable as the track progresses. And I kind of like that. So I've left that, but everything else, again, I pulled out all the orchestral stuff, gave them their own proper submix, pulled out all the synths, gave them their all submixes, and then listened to the synths and thought, that doesn't work. And then thought, I've got more orchestral stuff now than just BBC Symphony Orchestra Discover. Why don't I go back and re-record all the Korg stuff, because I'd messed up all the Korg stuff because it was horrendously noisy when it stopped. So I fixed that. And look, I'm waffling. I'll just play you the track as it now is. You may recognise it from what it sounded like to start with, but it basically did the same thing 6 times, just with more cellos each time. And I thought, it's kind of not going to cut it for me now. Sorry, but that's not who I am now. So I added rather a lot of my trusty David Gilmour sounding G&L S500 Strat 2, and the result sounds like this. So there we have it. That's retiring version. Well, it says version 2.0. It's actually kind of about version 4. But that's coming along. That's coming along. Differential says, does the bass act as a pendulum since it took over the tickings at the beginning? Exactly. The whole thing was geared around 60 beats per minute. So I started off, I literally recorded one of my clocks from downstairs and looped that. And that's the introductory thing. So, of course, me being me, I had to obsessively shuffle it around so that the ticks lie exactly on the grid because nerd. So there you go. Yeah, that needs a bit of work, I think. It's nearly there. It certainly sounds a heck of a lot better than it did. The MIDI mix and the synth mix, I think I can print those. Those are done, but the guitar's too fuzzy. So I think what I'm going to do is, I won't be doing it for a while, but when I have the studio back together, I will be re-recording the guitar with a much, much quieter guitar on it. And you notice these days I'm actually putting what guitar I used. The D4 is the setting on my Zoom stomp box, and 4C is the setting on the Muir Ocean machine. So as Differential says, you don't mess around when it comes to details. Mate, this is nothing. There are only 26 tracks here. You need to watch what Ryako does when it comes to details, because she will have over 100 tracks on her stuff without even drawing a breath, which I just find astonishing and amazing. And one thing, though, that I have noticed, I know Mel struggles with having to freeze stuff, is that when I'd first done this, I'd got my other audio interface, and I'd also got an earlier version of Ableton loaded and earlier versions of a bunch of stuff. And I've got a lot savvier about spreading and distributing load on my machine by using sends and having, and again, look, there we go, another instance of the reverb here, Strange Room I was using for this one, which is a very strange reverb. In fact, it's so strange, let me share it with you, because this is what the reverb send sounds like. It's bizarre. So that's the reverb that I'm using on this. But I'm only using one reverb there rather than having, 9 or 10 instances of R4 with different presets on different tracks, because that's just silly. And they all tend to tread on each other's feet, and you don't want that. It just becomes a mass of mud. So I'm really trying to be a bit savvier about lightening my CPU load and at the same time getting a clearer mix, which is what I think I'm getting there with that. Differential says, I really love the song, by the way. The fuzzy guitars didn't bother me, but I can see why you would go for a clean tone. I mean, I have this guitar. I mean, we were talking on a stream a couple of weeks ago about what if somebody won the lottery and bought me, it was a fountain pen, wasn't it? I said, rather than that fountain pen, I would much rather have 10 Stratocasters for the same money. And I would still love a Fender Stratocaster. That is one guitar that I've never owned a real proper Strat. I've got loads of Strat shapes, and this is actually, well, the G and L there is George and Leo, and it's George Fullerton. See, I remembered this time because I looked it up after we talked about this last time. and L is Leo Fender. Because when he retired, he said, "Well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to relax and enjoy retirement." And that lasted about a year. And he formed G&L with George Fullerton, and they started building guitars again. And Leo basically said, "I'm going to do the Strat properly this time." So it's got a very, very much more finely engineered tremolo block on it compared with the Strat, and a whole bunch of other things that are very different. It's got coil taps which change which pickups are being used. Ryako Music says that gaudy fountain pen, yeah, the Mad King Ludwig one. But so this guitar is my closest I've got to a Strat, and I picked it up second hand in my local guitar shop, and it had been in there for a while, and I avoided asking if I could have a play on it because I knew damn well what would happen if I did. And then one day I was in there and I thought, it's still there, and somebody might buy it and not give it the good home that I'd give it. So eventually I just said, can I have a go with it? It's just got that twang to it that Strats have, and with a decent... just shuffling pedals here. With a decent sort of clean tone, you can do all sorts of things. Add reverb. So this is, I mean, the settings on the pedals there are what I've been playing with this afternoon, and they're, I'm just going through a low gain phase at the moment, very little distortion. Turn the volume up on the guitar a bit and you get a little bit of breakup. But not a lot. So I might redo that track with this sort of sound. Bit more reverb maybe? Yeah, I will be here all night if I don't unplug this. But so this baby, and it's not black. I don't know if you can see that, but it is a beautiful, very, very, very dark blue. The finish on this thing is absolutely gorgeous, and you can see the wood grain through the paint. So it's a translucent finish, and I picked it up for silly money. I really did. I'd have easily spent twice that amount on this, and the person who bought it new would have done. So Noisha says, I may have to start paying the idiot tax just to buy you an expensive car. Oh, no. I have, yeah, I'd like a Strat, but that little lot there will absolutely do me. I've got guitars for different tasks, and they've got different characters, and they do different things. And, you know, I've got the shouty heavy metal guitar with the completely flat fingerboard, and the Floyd Rose for all the heavy metal squealy pinched harmonic type stuff, and I can basically get my David Gilmour on with that, especially seeing as I've got a pedal down there which is called a Keeley Dark Side, which is David Gilmour in a box, really. Ryako Music says it's pretty. It is pretty. So there you go. There was one other thing that I was waiting to see if anybody had picked me up on. If we go back to, I think it was, I've got to remember which track it was. Was it the Hag? I think it was the Hag, where it's got what sounds suspiciously like a theremin in it, but it ain't the Moog Etherwave of mine, what I have, because ages ago I went on to, and I think, in fact, let me just check. We'll just check because it's in my user library of stuff. So it is this track. Chris's memory does not let him down. It's this track here, Theremin Vintage 2. So it's from Foundation Atmospheres, which is a pack. The thing about using Ableton Live, which is brilliant, is that people make lots of packs for it. Pure Magnetic, and I've been on their mailing list for a while. And do you remember the Inner Velt sound mangler that I was using, that you bought one of Pure Magnetic's guys' albums on Bandcamp, and when you bought the album you got the zip file of the album and a link to a Pure Magnetic free VST plugin that was really, really nice. But this one, you can just go to the Pure Magnetic site and click on the download button. So the reason why it's fun is because one of the things that you get in it is a Theremin VST plugin. And this is it, Theremin Vintage. So it's in Foundation Atmospheres. You literally just drop it into your track on Ableton, and it is spookily accurate. But you don't have all the faff of it not being in tune. So this is now my new favoritist thing ever. I mean, sorry, Etherwave. I do still love my Theremin, but in tune Theremin on demand. And it's got the same pitch range as a real one. How low can you go? Not that low, obviously. Ryako Music says this is much easier too. You're damn right it is. The thing is, it automatically legatos. If you hold down two keys, it portmanteaus between them perfectly like a normal theremin would. So that's my HFO tip for Ableton users, all of you out there, and I know there's quite a few of you out there. Pure Magnetics Foundation series, download it, it's free. Drop it in your user library and you get access to all sorts of wonderful things. There's also a lithophone. A lithophone is a musical instrument made out of rocks. So it is literally for making rock music. Haha, you see what I did there. Let me drop that into a track and I'll show you what that sounds like. If I can, I want a new MIDI track. Let's insert MIDI track. Right, here we go. So here we go, rock music. It has a destroy controller, which, I mean, so let me, I'll show you. Oh, yes, because I moved the bed. Me webcam's in the wrong place. There we go. So I don't know if you can see the parameters on that, if it's too small. Let me go. So there you go. You can see there is there destroy, it says. So what does that do? Ooh, fuzz. Yeah, limited use, I think. What's travel? Getting into the interesting bits. As De French Dose says, spooky vibes, and it's Spooktober. It is indeed. So lots of fun to be had with Ableton packs that are free to download once you've got Ableton. Reactor Music says, that's eerie. It sure is. It sure is. Right, folks. It's 11 o'clock. Rather than going for the hour or hour and a half that I said I was going to do, I've managed to go for 2 hours. But all good things come to an end. So tonight's show comes to an end. With that comes to an end my broadcasting from this particular setup. It's all hands to the pumps. It's all going to be changed. And it will look very different in here the next time that you see all of this. Because all of this is going. But before all of this goes, and if I point the camera down, you can see just how much of this there is. In fact, if I can pick up the camera. So here we go. Live on HFO TV. This is what I've got this is what I'm facing having to move over the next. So yes, this is the audio connection for the stream, because all the audio for the stream comes into the Zoom Q8 that I'm using, which is the picture that you're going there. So all of this is going, all of this has to go into the front bedroom. So lava lamp, which I forgot to turn on, digital recorder, various studio bits of goodness, Ableton push, and then the bits that you never see on the show underneath are all the amps. So that VS Musician at the back there was the first amp that I ever used at a gig. And then the Phil Jones briefcase bass amp there is wickedly loud. And so is that, which is a little 15 watt solid state Blackstar amp. And then, of course, I also have to disconnect the monolith. This is my system that I bought the bare bones of and then completely pulled apart and put loads and loads of extra bits in it. It's got about 12 terabytes of storage in it now. In fact, it might actually be more than that. But yeah, so all of this is going. And the next time you see all of this, it will be in a completely different orientation. A bit like that orientation just then. So, indeed. But, De French says, so many cables. Riaka Music says, you've got so much stuff to move. You can $1 million man it. Riaka Music says, goodbye old setup. But, yeah, I'm kind of not looking forwards to shunting all the gear around, but I am looking forwards to sitting down at a desk knowing that I can stand up and not give myself a head injury. So there is that. But with that, it is time to bid you a good night and power this all down for the best part of a week to 10 days possibly before it's up and running again. If it's up and running again, of course it's going to get up and running. Touch wood, everything's going to work when I plug it back in. So to recap, no show on Thursday and probably almost definitely no show next Sunday. Whatever that Thursday is, I will be back online, and as it's Halloween on the Saturday, I will be in my Halloween costume. So you guys have got to tune in to see the spectacle of cosplay Chris on Head First Only television. So that's 1 week from Thursday, and it should be a hoot. But until then, look after yourselves. It's been great hanging out with you. Thank you for keeping me company this evening. Hope you like the music. There will be lots more music to come when the new studio is all set up. But until then, this is HFO signing off from HFO Television until Stream Mark II version 2, the next generation, starts happening a week on Thursday. So I will see you then. Wish me luck.